Hello and welcome to this week's Scriptcase webinar. My name is Jamie Oates and I am your host today. In this week's video and webinar with Scriptcase, we will be building and reviewing an image or file upload/storage system using local, Dropbox or Amazon A3 buckets to store your files or images. This week I will also be using the online hosted version of Scriptcase. So if you want to find out more about that, you can view our page with hosting options for your developed projects. Or you can get an online version of Scriptcase, just as I will be using today. Do check it out, the plans and prices are great, and just like me, you can also have an online hosted version of the Scriptcase development environment. Okay, so let's start off by checking out the platform that we will be building today. And with that, we will be creating a platform that manages images or files on a local server or on the server where you have the platform hosted, or on Amazon A3 or on Dropbox. So you will have the choice there, and you can also use some of the other APIs for alternative online storage options. So we have here a grid, which then displays an image, a file size, a date added, a title. We also have notes added to each of these also. So we can then basically just use the form here. We should actually probably make some changes here to the image size so it actually looks a little nicer when we actually use it. So we can click the add button here, and then with that it will open the form, and we can then add our files, also include some notes in that, and then we can use that within our project that we have online. So we have that for Amazon as well as also for Dropbox. So these then load the images first of all locally and then from the online version, depending if you store it locally, because you do have that option also. And then with Dropbox it's the same, so there it just loads the image and then it will display it within the grid application. And again, the form is pretty much the same as the local version, because what we will be doing is creating one of these and then replicating that throughout, and then just modifying or making a few slight adjustments so that it works either for Amazon or for Dropbox. Okay, so let's then have a quick look at the database that we will be using. So I have here a very basic structure. So within the database, I have a table called files, and there I have some very basic fields. First of all, the file ID, the date added, the storage, the file title, as well as the file. So that would be the file name, the file size, as well as then some notes that we can add to the files that we've been uploading. Okay, to start off creating the project, we can then jump into Scriptcase, and what I will do is then start creating a whole new project. So if I come here to home, and then we can close this project. And then what we can do is start off by creating a whole new project, and we can give it its own name, add an icon to it also, because I haven't actually added an icon to this one. And so I'll start off then by creating a project, and then we'll start by creating a blank project. So my Firefox is a little slow today. I think it's just sucking memory for some reason. As you see, I've removed all the plugins and everything, and it's still not making any difference. So I'm really sorry about that. But it's how it's going to have to be, I'm afraid. So I'm going to start off by adding an icon or an image to the project so that I can identify it visually really quickly. So I can actually just open up the side panel here. And because I've actually imported this project, I've also imported all of my images I have locally, or I should have done. That should actually be in public folder, not project, sorry. The public folder. Right, and then here general images, and then I can close this. Now this will more than likely happen with you. Also, once you import the project, you will end up with all the images that I also have added, as well as some of the scripts and so on that I also have built into or added personally into my Scriptcase. So here then basically if I just search for something called file and see here, now that's a nice one, so I'll use that. a perfect file manager icon or image that I can use. So I just check the checkbox. Once that checks, and then I click on add selected, and that then gets added here for the project details. So here I'll call this online file manager, and then I can also add here a description if I wanted to, or any additional project information I can include below. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click the next button. Okay, so I need to choose now the database, and as I said, I'm using the online version of Scriptcase, and with that I will also be using an online database, which I have just shown you, the database fields as well as the tables, and that is then a MySQL database. So I choose here MySQL, and then what I need to do is copy and paste my username and password in here, and then once that's in there I can then test the connection, and it will then tell me whether the connection is okay or not. And then once that's done, I can then also list the databases. So I need to do that first actually. Database selected, and I'll see here straight away the database for my connection here. I do note that we can make changes to the database connection directly from this page within the security, filter, and advanced tabs. Okay, so once that's done, we can test the connection, make sure it all works beautifully, and then I'll just click on the next button. And that will then start to create our project already connected to our database. And then the next option is then for our languages. So we can then add multiple or a single language to our project. So I can add here as many languages as I want to, as well as the regional settings, which I can specify here on the right hand drop down menu. So I won't be adding any of those. I'm just going to leave it as English. But you can actually come here and add any of those that you need. Now, if you do that straight away when you create your project, then you will automatically have those fields added for any of the auto tools that you use within Scriptcase. So for instance, if I add German now, it will automatically add the language keys for the security suite. So for the login, the logout in German for you, which is a great thing to do. So if you want to add languages, do plan ahead and add those languages when you create the project. Okay, so then the next option we have is then our themes. So here I can choose the type of theme that I want to use within this project. And I think I'm just going to stick here with the blueberry, or in fact, I'm feeling a bit hot today. So let's go here with the guava. That's a nice one. The guava is nice. I'll set that as default. And then what I can also do is remove the blueberry. So that will also then reduce the size of my project. Okay, so I'll remove that and then just have the one or the individual theme available. Now, if I do select multiple themes, then I can use one of the built-in Scriptcase methods and actually dynamically change the theme on a per user basis or per project basis if I wanted to. That's quite easy to build into Scriptcase, so that's definitely something to think of if you want to add multiple themes, a dark theme, a light theme, and so forth. So, okay, so continuing on, we're now finishing up our project. Our project's now nearly completed. And then all we need to do is start creating our applications. Okay, so now we're ready, and Scriptcase has now scanned our database basically, and it's going to provide us various applications that we can then create within our project. So for this project, we basically are only going to be creating a grid application, a form application, and then also a menu application. So I'll start off straight away with the grid, and within the grid I can cheat and I can create the form straight away. So I'm going to be doing that in a moment. So if I choose here the table that we have, which is then the files table. Okay, so I choose then the files table. The fields are automatically selected for me. Now I can change here the name if I wanted to. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to call this grid, and I'm going to change it to grid local files. Like so. So it's grid underscore local underscore files. And on the right hand side here, we could change the SQL statement now. I'm going to leave it as it is for the time being. And if you may have noticed that within the table that I had created, I had added here the storage field. So this storage field will contain the location of our file. So we will have to change that afterwards, and we will have to configure that within the SQL for each the grid form, as well as then for each of the areas that we are then going to create. So Dropbox, Amazon, and then local. Okay, so that will then use this field here. So we want to keep all of these fields basically. If you want to remove, like, say, the notes, you can do that, or the date added. If you really don't want it, then you can do that directly here, and I can just delete that if I wanted to, or put it back again. Okay, so continuing on down the bottom here, we can actually create the form here. So as I was saying, we can actually cheat now and create this form straight away. So I will want to change here the name of this form straight away, and I'm going to call it local_files, and then we can run the application afterwards. So I'm not going to do that. I want to uncheck that, and yeah, I'll just leave that as default for now and save that, because I really don't care about the behavior right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the create button. Okay, so now Scriptcase is going to go ahead, generate the grid as well as the form from our database fields, tables, and basically read everything that's there and suggest the available fields within each of those applications. So it does this really, really well. And then we can come in here into the grid application, or the form, which is also generated in the back end now. So it's not going to open this straight away. It will only open now the grid application, generate both the grid and form, and it will then also open it if I have that checkbox checked, which I didn't do. So now it's just going to generate here the grid, and then the form here will also be here, and we can open that also. So here within the form application, I'll start off by coming here to edit fields, and then on edit fields, we can then make adjustments to the fields where they are positioned and so forth. So here I'm going to drag the file ID and bring it to the bottom here, so it's not shown. So as it says here, page field not shown, and then also the notes. So we don't want, well, we want that actually displayed in the, not displayed in the grid, but we want that here. So I'll leave that there for now, and I will want to adjust them around a little. So here the storage, if I drag that up to above the date added, okay, and then we want the file title, and then the file, and the date added, I would actually remove that one from here, from this field, and then here to the right, I'm going to choose here from the drop down option for the insert value that I want to have defined automatically. So here I can choose one of these values, and here I will auto increment, or date of insertion, date time of insertion if I wanted to, depending on the field that I have, or I can leave it all calculated by the database, or even just leave it blank and you deal with it somewhere else in the back end. So here I'm just going to choose date of insertion, and that way this field is automatically dealt for me by Scriptcase, and I don't have to worry about that. The date is going to be beautiful and added to that field. And here the file size, I'm going to hide that one also. So I drag that down. Okay, so I want file size, not file notes. Okay, so I'll save that. And then what I want to do is create a slightly different layout here before we change or edit the fields. But we can modify some of these fields while we're here straight away. So I'm going to do that quickly here with these drop down menus, and that way they will be automatically applied here within the application. So here for the storage data type, I want to choose a radio field. So I'm going to scroll that all the way down. Come down here to radio field, and then the next file title, I want that as a text field. For file, I want to choose here the document image. Now I could have that as document file, image file name, sorry, and I could have that as document file name. So if you want to store documents instead of files, then that is also an option. I'm just going to choose to save the images, and then we can actually change that. So for file notes, I want to change here from image database, because it's a blob file. Scriptcase tends to view that as an image database option or something along those lines. So I'm going to choose here the HTML editor. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and save the application. Okay, so I just changed here the field for the file notes to HTML editor, and the file for the image file name, and we had saved the application. So let's go ahead and run that quickly. So you may notice in between quickly that I have changed browser, so Firefox was becoming a little unbearable. Okay, so we have here first of all the file displayed that I had already stored in the database, as well as some of the other files which are stored in Dropbox, and we see that here, the storage Dropbox. I can go across and it's not actually open the rest of them, but we can look at that as we continue. Anyway, so we have then the storage, the file type, and the file, as well as the notes. So let's carry on first of all and organize the rest of our application here. So I have here then the layout. So I want to move here the notes into a tab, or in a different view here, so it's not all together, because once we have the image loaded, it could be quite big, depending if we then specify the image sizes, which I'm not really doing. So I'll come here first of all to blocks, and we're here within blocks. I'll create a new block, and this then allows us then to create containers basically on our form application, and then arrange our content slightly differently. So here within next, I can choose below, so then the container will be displayed below. I can choose beside, so it will be then displayed next to it if I change here the width. Otherwise it will be pretty ugly, which you will see. And so I want to choose here tabs, so it is then displayed in a tab. Now here the next item from this would then be below, so we don't have to change anything on this one. So here I will display the title on both of these. So here I'll say the file, and here some notes, and then we can display the titles for the fields here for file, and for the notes, because it's the HTML editor, I will not really want to display this within that tab that we're going to have. So I'm going to remove that. So I'll uncheck that box here, and that will remove that title. So if I save that now, and then come back here to fields or edit fields, I can then drag the notes into this new block that we have. And now if I go ahead and run the form application, that will now be displayed in two tabs that we have then on our form, like so. Okay, so I want to make this a little nicer, and maybe we'll actually make some adjustments here for the elements. And what I want to really quickly do before we continue is actually, well, we can actually just make the changes here to the fields first. So I come here to fields, and I'll come here first of all to storage, which is our radio option that we had set. And here I want to choose manual as the lookup method. So automatic will connect to the database, and manual I can define those options myself. So here I'm going to say Amazon, and I'll say Amazon. I'll insert that. Add another one called Dropbox. Of course, we may want to spell that as they want us to spell it, if that's correct. Okay, and we could call it here Dropbox, and insert that also, and then we can have one that's called then local storage. Okay, and then this one is then called local. So I will insert that, and maybe we want the local at the top, and then we can leave it alphabetically downwards at AD, so Amazon Dropbox. Now here, typically we would want to maybe display this in 3 columns. So if I go ahead and run that now, we'll then have our form application updated here with the storage now with our radio options that we have. So now typically we would maybe want to have these displayed next to each other, but we're not going to keep these. Okay, this is only going to remain in this one form, and then we can remove them within the next ones. So I want to use here the switch method, and that will then change the well, we can have a quick look at it. If I run it again, now notice here the radio options are in black. Now they are nicely colored like so, and they're also easier to style. So if you wanted to style those, they're much easier to style. So come back into the form application. Okay, so we now have our file field. The title we could pretty much leave as it is, and the file where we're uploading here to the image, and we want to change here the subdirectory, and I want to change that here to files. Okay, so that's where then all of the files will be stored on the server. And then because we are using a form, I want to also create this folder just in case it doesn't exist. So when we upload our project to a new server and our files folder does not exist yet, it will actually create this folder for us. And that will then also allow us to use then the ID, for instance. So in curly brackets, I could use the ID or any other variable within the application and also apply that as indicated here. Okay, and then apply that to the images, to the path, and so forth. Okay, so at the bottom here we have further options for our extensions, and because I'm using images, I'm going to specify some limits for our images. So I'll say 2 megabytes is more than enough for a JPEG, and then we can specify PNGs and specify that much in further detail for each of the extensions, as well as the file sizes that we want to have enabled for an image. So I'm going to remove those, but that is an option. Okay, so I'm going to leave that because I didn't actually apply that within the original, and I really do not know if they are extensions lowercase JPEG or uppercase JPEG. It sometimes varies, and that can then add, you know, a long list here. So instead of just adding 1 or 2 extensions there, I'm just going to leave it for the time being. So now within the grid application, we want to modify here our fields. So we see here our fields within the fields folder, and then viewing the edit fields, I can then make some adjustments here. So we were saying before, we didn't want the file ID displayed, the file notes, the date added. I'm going to change that to the back end here. Okay, and the file size, I'll leave that there also. So then we have the storage type, title, file, as in the image will then be displayed, the file size, as well as then the date added. Okay, so we need to also change the file types that we have here, because you see that Scriptcase identified the file type as a text field. So here I want to change this directly as a document file name or image file name. So using images, so I go image file name. And that will then also update here the field within the left hand side. And then I can choose here the file, and the options will also already be ready for us. And again here, I want to add then the location where I will be storing the files, which is then a folder called files. And we can then leave the rest of this as it is, or of course we can define here the height and width of the image that will be displayed. So if I go ahead and run the grid application now, we will see then the forms images, sorry, that we already have stored here. Now we do have them also local, Amazon, and Dropbox. So this is the image stored on each of these locations. So we will want to change these. Okay, so you may want to change here the size. So let's go ahead and do that because they are quite big, and then we can change here the image height. So I'll say 200. So actually, let's go 160, and the height of say 320, and that should make them look a little nicer, maybe even a little widescreen, and that should fit a little nicer inside of our grid application. Okay, so to clean things up a little more also for our grid here, I'm going to come here to the grid modules, and within the grid modules here I can make changes here to the search, the grid itself, the detail module, the summary, or the chart. So we will not be using the summary or chart within this application, and because the notes are not displayed, I will leave the detail here. Okay, now search, I'm going to change the search here to open within the modal window. So here for search modal, I will choose yes. Now I can specify a height and width here if I wanted to. I'm not going to, but then here for the table width, I will choose a 100% width. So that will automatically go the size that it needs to go. And then here for the grid, I will choose also a percent width of 100%. The pagination, we could change this here to infinite scroll, for instance. So I'm going to do that because it's always nice for images. So I'll change that here to infinite scroll. And then we can change here how many scrolls we want to change. So I'm going to change that to 3, and so it depends on the size. And then for Windows, we can open our windows using modal. So I will leave that, and I will also maintain the records. Now you may have noticed that we have advanced settings there also, which we could then go and do. And we have also a notice at the top that was also displayed for us here. So here it's identified that we're using tree view option. So we're not really using a tree view within anything because we have nothing extra display. So we can ignore that, okay? And then we can come here into the settings option. Now here within the settings, I want to apply here the vertical alignment and place that to top. Now if I go ahead and run the grid application now, there won't be a great deal of changes, but it will be full size to the browser window now, so it's full width, 100% as we had set. The vertical top specifies that the grid should remain at the top. We had also left here the detail and remove the summary and so on, because we will not be grouping the content within this single application. So we will only want to display local files here. So there is one important change that we need to make to both the grid as well as the form application, and that would then be here within SQL. And then here we want to change or prepare an SQL preparation as it's defined here, and sorry, we're actually in the grid. So that is for the form. So within the grid, we can actually just edit it straight away here within the SQL statement. So here I will just say straight away where, and then we have our storage here. So if I just space a few times and then I'll go storage equals, and we have that as local. Okay, so that will then only display now our local files. So if I run that again, we will now only have one image displayed, and you see there also the auto scrolling, which is then enabled. So this will then display as many images as we have there. So if I go ahead now and click add new, we have here then our option. So we actually need to change this here. Also, you see there was nothing defined there. So let's change that quickly here within the form. So here for the form local, we will want to make some changes here also for the styling and so on. But first of all, for this storage option, when we have now, so if I run the form application again now, and now you see if I go add new, it is not automatically selecting the storage type. And because we will only be using the local storage within this option, I need to select the option that we'd added into the manual lookup, and I need to specify here the default yes. So, and then I need to update that field, and then I can store this. Okay, and then run the form application again. And now when I go add new, the local option will be automatically selected. Okay, so let's make a few adjustments here before we actually add some images here and so forth. So first of all, we want to change here some options for this form. So we could change the form orientation if you wanted to. So if you want to add more than one image in one go, you can choose here the multiple records, the editable grid, or one of my favorites here is the editable grid view, and use that with the modals and so forth to add your images into your project. So I'm just going to leave it a single record, but you can really quickly change that just with one click there, and your form will have a completely new layout and look. Okay, so within settings, I want to apply here the input width to 100% and also the vertical alignment again to top. Now I will specify again 100% width, and sorry, here the temp table width is as percent and 100%. So if I go run now, and then within the form, it will again fill out the browser window, and again we have here Dropbox displayed as well as the Amazon images and so forth. We have them all mixed up here, so we want to adjust that also. So now we're here within the form, we have then the SQL, and as I was saying, we can't actually adjust here the SQL select, but we can add here a where clause. So here we would then specify storage equals, and there we again say local. Okay, just like so, and then I can save that and then run the form application again. And now within the form, I will only have local storages. You see, I only have now one image displayed, and it only now displays the local stored images for this form. Okay, so coming back into the local file here, I do still want to make adjustments to the image that's actually displayed. So I can choose here the file, and here for the image height as well as the width, I can change the height and width of the image that will be displayed here. So what do we have for the height? We had 180, and then I think we had 360 or 330 there for the image width. So if I go ahead and run that again, and notice I do have the maintain aspect ratio checked here, so it will maintain that when resizing the image. And there we go. Now we have our form with the title, the image where we can drag and drop it also, and notes that we can add to each of these images. So we'll want to make one final change to this once we have adjusted our or created our Amazon and Dropbox options. Now, you may have noticed within the one I created previously, I had also added within the layout, I had added custom icons here. So we could remove here the date field, for instance, and then if I open, say, Font Awesome icons, and then here we can search, for instance, for a Dropbox icon or an Amazon icon, and we can then add those into our individual applications, or even the individual icon for files. So I'll just search here for files, and then we can basically copy and paste an icon from here directly into our project. So if I just scroll down here for all of these free ones, and we choose here archive, for instance. Archive's nice, and then we can just copy and paste the oh, it's actually done the search now. Okay, so I'll just choose here the file icon then as an example. Maybe images would be more suitable, but the file icon will do us. And then we can just copy this. So I just copy this here, and then I can come back into my application, and I can actually use that here as my header. I do need to change here the hyphens here, so I'll remove those, and then that I can then copy paste into each of these, and then call that here local files, and paste that there also. And then if I run that again, we now have an icon for our form and a nice title there also, and we have also removed here the date. Okay, so now you could of course increase the size of the icon by adding, I think that's FA2X if I remember correctly. If I run that again, and now the icon file will be displayed larger, like so. Okay, so we can apply that to each of the applications, and really quickly, because Scriptcase is so amazing, we can actually just close both of these applications now, and that is our local storage done. So what I want to do now is first of all create some folders so that we have some some organization within this project. So I'm going to create first of all the local folder, and then I will then create, say, another folder for online, and then create that. And then within the online folder, I will create two more folders, which I'll call then the Dropbox folder. And then back to the online folder. So I create it within the online folder, and there I want to create an Amazon folder. And then click create. Okay, so then coming back here to the root folder, which is where we have our grid and form located. So I'll select these, and I can then choose here the move option, and then specify the folder to which I want to move them. So I will move them to the local folder I had just created, and choose OK. And now we have a cleaner environment, and our files are much better organized for us then to find them and deal with them later. Okay, so then what we want to do then is basically copy these applications. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at the API. So we come up here to Tools, and we have here API. Now you do have multiple options of adding the online storage. Now I have added here in my user space two APIs, one for Dropbox and one for Amazon. So you just come here and click on Add New, and then you can choose your mode. So whether it will be public, project, or user. Okay, and then you choose your gateway. Now for Amazon, you have here storage, which is what we are doing today, online storage. So you can choose Amazon, Dropbox, or even Google Drive. So I would choose Dropbox, for instance. I'll specify a name for this, so I can give it any kind of name I want, and then enter the API key, the API secret, as well as the API token. Now for Dropbox, let me come back into Firefox again. So I had that all open here. Now within Dropbox, you will need a developer account. So once you have your developer account open, so you come here to dropbox.com/developers, you can create yourself a new app. Okay, so I come here to the app console, for instance. I have here the option to create an app. And then once you create an app, you follow through and create basically the same as what we have here. So if I come here to File Manager, for instance, you'll see here that you just need to add some very basic settings. It's for development. It's only for you. You give it an app folder name. You have then an app key as well as a secret that you then need for your application. So that is then when you would then obtain that from. If you want to lock it to a specific domain, then you can do so here and actually contain your project a little more. You can even add webhooks if you wanted to. So you can create those here. Now the permissions for Dropbox are important. You will need all of these checked. So this one isn't the one I'm using today. So I'll come out of this and choose here the sample project. And here the permissions. And then we see in here the permissions are all checked. So this is what the API we are using today. And here we have all of the options checked, okay? For branding, we don't really need to add anything unless you wanted to. And analytics, we can then see what's actually been happening and access and so forth, okay? So once you have that defined for Dropbox, then you may want to create your bucket for Amazon. So here within the Amazon console, you can select within the menu, the services option. And then coming down from services, you can choose here the S3 option, and that will then create here your S3 buckets. So from here, you can select the create bucket option. You can choose the location of the storage as well as, you know, the name of your storage. And then within that, you see I have two buckets here. One is for my mail server, and then this one is for today's testing. So here we have the storage files, and within that I'm uploading the files to a files folder, and then within the files folder I can then view the files that I have uploaded. Okay, so that is then within the Amazon a free storage option. So once you have your API and everything configured here, so for the Amazon you will need to configure some different options. So we have here the storage Amazon S3 option. So choosing that, you will need your key, your API secret. You will need to choose your region. Okay, so that is very important, as well as then the bucket must be provided. So if I close those, and if I edit mine, for instance, here, we can see here that it's Europe Frankfurt. I have then the storage of the bucket here, and then all of the information filled in as required for each of these. Okay, so once your API has been added, you can then very quickly and easily use the inbuilt options with Scriptcase. But let's have a look at that in the next part of this video, and I'll see you again shortly in part 2. Thank you very much for watching this Scriptcase webinar.